If you want to change the money habits that are keeping you broke and working in the rat race, living paycheck to paycheck, then this is the perfect video for you. In my previous video, I talked about how at the beginning of this year, I was $33,000 in debt, working a full-time job in Los Angeles, and I had side hustles, so money was really never an issue. However, after doing a life audit and an audit on my finances, I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I felt like I was working and not really seeing my money grow in the way that I preferred it to grow. And after doing some reflection, it was probably my fault. I mean, I was traveling, living in a high-rise apartment. I was eating out and going out every weekend. Y'all, I was having a ball, not gonna lie. LA was fun. I was in my early 20s. I just got my first full-time job. But then I had an epiphany. I no longer wanted to work in the rat race and just feel like I was just getting by. I wanted to see my wealth and my money and all my hard work actually doing something for me. So it was honestly really then that I knew that I needed to make some changes. After making those changes and becoming 100% debt-free and reflecting a little bit, these are the 3 money habits that kept me broke in my early 20s. Number 1 was lifestyle inflation. Making more money and spending more money. I like to live my life a certain kind of way. I like nice things. I like to go out. I like to enjoy my friends and have cool experiences, especially living in a new city like LA. And a lot of the times when you grow up around people who aren't the most financially literate, no one really teaches you how to go into the adult world and how to spend once you start making some money. There were a lot of mistakes that I made that I probably would change if I could go back today. Even though I was grossing a little bit over $100,000 a year, I never really saw any of that because I had expenses that were pretty large, like housing, credit card debt, going out every weekend, vacations, shopping, and then of course experiences, which I don't really regret the experiences as much because they were core memories. And if I'm going to spend on anything nowadays, it's going to be an experience that I can always remember and cherish. I prefer those over the material things anyway, because the material things I had no business spending that much money on. And the habit of spending more money as you make more money is very common to fall into that trap if you aren't careful about tracking your expenses or just being mindful about what you're spending on. Now, this is a bad money habit that kept me broke because I wasn't capitalizing on the periods of time where I was making a lot of money and using that as an opportunity to invest in other things. So it was kind of just honestly, in a sense, wasteful because a lot of the things that I got that gave me short-term gratification, I no longer needed in the long run. Now, the one thing that I say that I don't regret and was most valuable in this time was investing in myself and my skills, because I used those skills to make more money. For example, I invested in a camera and then I used that camera to get photography clients in LA. That's a good investment because I'm getting a return on the item that I'm buying, fueling my passion for photography and making money along the way. Now, the second bad money habit that I had in my early 20s that kept me broke is feeling like I needed to get an expensive car. Prior to moving to LA, I lived in DC because I attended Georgetown University. If you know anything about Georgetown, you don't really need a car because the campus is super congested and small. So everything that you need is within a walking distance, essentially. And Uber prices, at least back then, were not as expensive. There wasn't any need for me to get a car in college, essentially. No one around me had a car, and so it just didn't make sense. However, if you know anything about living in LA, you absolutely need a car, especially if you are working in the city. Ubers out here can get really pricey and will add up, and it's just more cost efficient to have a car. So one of the first things that I had to do once I got my full-time job living and working in LA is getting a car. However, no one really teaches you how to shop around for a car. At least no one really taught me how to shop around for a car. So there were a lot of mistakes that I made. Mistakes like even going to the dealership, and there were a lot of little things that they don't teach you about the dealerships, which is really like a scam. There's so many nuances that you have to know, like interest rates, knowing how to negotiate, not accepting the first deal that the dealership will give you because they will literally try to sell you a dream and make it seem like it's the best offer when really it's probably not. One of my first jobs when I moved to LA was working at a talent agency, and it was one of the top 3 talent agencies in entertainment. And my boss, who I assumed had a lot of money, I remember he asked me to do something for his car registration, and when I went to complete the task, I found out that he had a Toyota Corolla. And in my mind, I thought, why does this man who I assumed in my mind was really rich drive a Toyota Corolla that's not even the year that we're in. It was probably in that moment that I knew that I was not going to get a luxury car. So thankfully I didn't get a luxury car because at the time I probably could not afford it. And it really dawned on me that wealth sometimes is probably quiet. And so I should probably sit down and eat my food and get me a little cheap car. I didn't really get the best deal, but I didn't really get the worst. It was somewhere in the middle, and I bought a used car for about $19,000 or $20,000. Thankfully, I had a great credit score and I was able to get a low rate. But I think for me personally, that was a money habit that kept me broke because it then led to me having to pay an expensive car note every month, which added to my monthly expenses. I needed a car anyway, so at the end of the day, it just had to get done. The third money habit in my early 20s that kept me broke was lack of knowledge. Not knowing where I was at in my financial journey and not tracking my income and my expenses. I didn't start tracking my expenses until about March 2024. I just dreaded the thought of having to track every single expense. Plus, I was spending so much that I was just like, this is too tedious. I tried a couple different apps. None of them really stuck. And so budgeting never really worked for me. However, when I started my debt-free journey at the top of this year, I knew that one of the things that was going to be crucial to this journey is knowing what was coming in and knowing what was going out. And so I had to track all of my expenses. Plus, it's kind of cool now to look back on using my finance tracker, which you can download in the link in the description. It's kind of cool looking back and seeing everything that I spent in the year in the different categories. Thankfully, at the top of this year, though, I changed that bad habit and I started tracking everything: my income, my expenses, my debt, and my savings. Personally, what helped me with that is living by the 50-30-20 rule, which means that I spend no more than 50% of my income on my needs, 30% of my income on my wants, and at least 20% on my savings and investments. As long as I'm hitting around those percentages, I'm pretty good. So I don't really stress about the everyday number, but I just know that as long as I'm in the ballpark of those percentages, I'm good. So why exactly am I sharing this? I feel like at the beginning of this year, I had an epiphany. And as I started to talk to more of my friends, I realized that we're all literally going through the same thing and we have much in common than we even know because we never talk about it. Finance was always such an unconventional topic that no one ever really spoke about. And I kind of want to change that within my community. Hopefully me sharing my bad money habits in my early 20s can be sort of an epiphany for you. And if you are not tracking your finances and living above your means and in the process of looking for a new car, hopefully you have found this video at the right time. And in order to change these bad money habits, I had to make some sacrifices. I talked about some of these sacrifices in my previous video where I detailed how I paid $33,000 of debt in 8 months. If you are on a similar debt-free journey and you are interested in seeing that, I will leave the video in my description below. Thank you guys for watching. And if you found value in this video, hit that subscribe button.